Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT modernization, and we're just getting ready to start talking about specific programs. And Mike, I'm going to throw it over to you at Department of State. You top-lined a lot of activity that's going on over there. Maybe you can give us an example of a specific program that you all are working on or have already completed that is really sort of, enabling the mission of the State Department.
Sure. It's tough sometimes to just pick out one, but I'll make a mention. I'll make a mention that we were big users, are big users of ServiceNow, and pressed that platform into use as the COVID crisis hit. And one of the major benefits that people saw is, as we were moving through this crisis, let's remember that we repatriated 100,000 Americans through 1,100 overseas flights while this crisis was continuing. And in the process of doing that, we had an immediate need for multiple different dashboards and systems to track where those flights were going, where the users were coming from, whether those people were infected with COVID-19, whether they needed medical care, where their families were. There was an insatiable need for dashboards and insights to make all that happen. And I think before, as you're probably well aware, that would have been getting together with an application development team and writing up a requirements document, and maybe 6 or 9 or a year later, 9 months or a year later, you might actually have the first iteration of some type of system to do that. But with these platforms as a service, our teams are able to rapidly innovate and iterate on that. And so within the matter of 5 to 7 days, we would continuously be able to push out new dashboards and new applications to help track the flow, not only of U.S. citizens that were coming back to the country, but from a process perspective, the need to distribute funds, to distribute to requisition aircraft, to provide medical care, so on and so forth. And so that, in and of itself, was a highlight to the organization, that the ways of doing application development in the past have, I think, long since now been superseded through the utilization of these platforms as a service capabilities. And so one of the major efforts underway is now moving more and more application development into those platform services so that we can iterate on application development in much more timely fashion. So that's one, and that's something that users will natively see, because the way that they interface with applications and data will change dramatically. And then I just have to highlight on the back end things that the users won't see. Network admission control and identity management, getting 100% fidelity on the devices and the identities of the users coming on to the network. And that is, if it was important before in fixed facilities, it's even more important now when you have this hybrid mode of people working from home with mobile devices, and they're trying to access corporate data and being able to make real-time adjudications as to the efficacy of the device and the individual requesting the data. So that's an ongoing project, and that'll become ever more important as we continue to move forward in this hybrid operating environment.
That identity management really key, and absolutely this low code, no code play that's on it. And there's always going to be purpose-built systems, right? That's just a fact. But boy, when you can bolt this stuff on in sort of a Lego block manner, and then you have that underlying database capability stitching it all together as sort of a seamless experience, and do it very, very rapidly. I mean, that's a slam dunk. I'm glad to see that you all are utilizing that technology. Well, that's a good tee up for you, Bridget. Why don't you give us another example, specific example of, maybe another department and agency that is using this capability to, so enable their mission, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. And yeah, Mike, appreciate hearing the success of that story in your modernization efforts. So one I'll share here would be around the Space Telescope Science Institute. They come to mind for me on successful completed modernization projects. So that the Institute's actually operated by NASA. And one of their main goals or mission is to manage the Hubble Space Telescope's observations, and then scheduling and support around that. So a few years ago, they were managing all this in a fairly manual way with little traceability and accountability as it resulted to that process. And as they were planning expansion of their mission and adoption of the James Webb Space Telescope, they saw a need for opportunity to modernize and improve those services to their astronomer customers. So their approach was to first establish those objectives. So key one being, how do they get data to people more quickly and provide the best possible experience to their customers in the fastest resolution for some of the requests and the questions and issues that were coming in. And then they developed a wish list, right? The ideal scenario for them. What do they want to achieve? And they revisited some of those workflows and process and identified what they needed to change. In addition, as a part of the project, they chose a cloud platform. They wanted one that enabled their organization to modernize and to meet their needs. So that system could deliver benefits for internal teams, but also for those external customers, right? And support linkages for those who are working across multiple missions and multiple teams. End result was increased visibility into all the activity that was happening and the level of support that they were providing both internally and also externally to their customers. So, with that information in the context, then the team was able to direct issues in the right level of support and to gain efficiencies as well around that.
Fantastic use case there. And NASA being obviously a very sophisticated agency and does have a lot of external partners that they're dealing with over there, right? It's as you can imagine. So bringing in a technology that sort of glues all that together is certainly a good news story. Lou, how about at Department of Labor? You talked about a lot of different things over there that are going on. Give us a specific example of one of those programs that you'd like to highlight.
Right. Thanks, Luke. Like the others, there's so many that are going on at DOL, it's hard to pick one. But since you asked about the Technology Modernization Fund earlier, I'll go to our Foreign Labor Application Gateway. I spoke of it a little bit earlier. It's a way for us to offer digitized temporary visa certifications and eliminate a paper-based process. That went live in January of 2020. And we've continued to build on that. We stood up a data hub infrastructure that went live in July. It uses IT platform data analytics capability for cross-agency communications and near real-time data sharing. We utilize the Technology Modernization Fund to do this. FLEG's Data Hub makes H-2A agricultural worker case data available to the USDA, Department of State, and DHS. There's a built-in API for Data Hub capability so that we can share that information and resources across the government. It streamlines the hiring and application process with near real-time status updates. So it's a robust platform that shares large amounts of data with external users, the employers, the foreign workers, other government agencies. USDA's farmers.gov portal integrated with this system using the Data Hub. And now farmers can access near real-time status and updates of applications that they're interested in. This shared access is possible because FLAG uses login.gov. It provides security, ability to log in from different portals from one access point, and gives the end users a multitude of ways to check on the status of these applications.
Well, that certainly warms my heart because the dream of sort of stitching all this together on the back end seamlessly and providing that great customer experience to whatever the customer be, whether it be a farmer, a small business owner, et cetera, is fantastic. And the fact that you all have been able to modernize and lay a platform down to stack these other capabilities on it is just fantastic. What a great news story. Kelsey, how about at Okta? Give us an example. I know you all are striped across a whole bunch of departments and agencies all over the private sector. Give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight that sort of shows the power of this capability that you all have.
Yeah, and I think something Mike mentioned that stuck out was really the importance of understanding that identity and making sure that we are seeing a high assurance of who that person is, who they say that person is who they say they are before they authenticate. And I think we're working as one example with the Air Force. They're shifting their entire A1, their human resources branch, they're shifting into the cloud, which looks, it's as you can imagine, a massive undertaking. There are hundreds of applications. There are also millions of users, both active duty and also non-active personnel, which means that we need to not only be a part of consolidation, bringing all of those users together to access those applications, but also how can we start to bring in different authentication methods for access for those different user types. So certainly things like if an active duty member has a CAC, we want to make sure that they're able to authenticate with that, but maybe even limiting access in certain locations depending on what we know about their context. So that's been really important, but also delivering alternatives. So for folks who are not active duty members, or I'm sure everyone here has folks who may not have a PIV reader at home. So how do I actually authenticate and get access to important information if I don't have that resource? And so what we're really seeing with this shift for A1 is really centralizing, but also being able to apply some of those risk methods and understanding context so that they can really enable, and I'll throw out the zero trust buzzword here, but really enable that for that long term, and be able to, as a result, manage, be able to audit, and be able to protect all of those different users as they're accessing those HR resources for H1.
Have to know who's on our network and have to know what they're authorized to do, et cetera, et cetera. Very critical. I'm glad to see that you're creating some variables too, recognizing that the world isn't perfect, and fast forward a lot of this new type of capability to make sure that we stay hard. And I'll say it one more time, hijacking identity, probably one of the #1 vectors that certainly has tipped us over a time or two. Dovarius, how about at the U.S. Army Corps? A lot of good activity going on over there. Tell us about one specific program you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, so again, at the core, data, using data as a strategic asset. Everything we do is centered around data. And as you know, data has many different components. One of those components that we're looking at is cloud, the cloud modernization. How do you access the data in a secured environment? A good example, we've been working with Netcom, as well as the rest of US Cybercom as well, to ensure that we can properly secure those type of environments, as well as the access to specific data. O365, there's a OWA capability. There's also Microsoft Teams and many others. One of the things we're working to do is to enable access without having to go through a VPN, being that of utilizing GFE as well as non-GFE. So with that being said, there are certain mechanisms that you have to put in place, as well as there are certain security protocols that needs to be enabled in order for you to be able to access that data. And that's just one instance of being able to ensure that we can move forward to a mobility enforced type of workforce. And the next part around our data strategy is an EVV. We call it EVV, which is our Enterprise Virtual Viewer capability. What that capability does is it brings the entire ecosystem together, being able to access data, view that data from authoritative sources, repositories, and be able to make informed decisions. Because ultimately, one of the things we've been in the core is so siloed as it becomes to systems and data. So looking at it from a different lens, not so much the systems lens, but the data lens. How can I access that repository and be able to make not just informed decisions, but utilizing it as an asset to enable sharing and mission collaboration amongst the department, as well as on the civil side, as well as the federal side, because the Army Corps of Engineers is a DoD entity, as well as a federal entity, with the uniqueness of the missions being out of civil works, levees, locks, and dams. Then you have the mill construction aspects of it, where we build hospitals and those type of things on camp posts and stations. And then you have the COVID-19 example, which is a disaster relief mission, as well as the floods that we fight within the Corps of Engineers.
Interesting model there. I think a lot of people, I mean, if you think about it, it certainly makes sense where you straddle from, the DoD environment .mil into the .com .gov environment, if you will. You're really across those three sectors, and the fact that you're able to leverage these modern platforms and then focus down into what you described there as people, the metaphor, data is the new oil type thing. Super important in a very complex environment. Great example there. Fred, how about over at Verizon? You all are, again, right in the fabric of what's going on, not only in this pandemic journey, but the modernization journey altogether, right? I mean, every cloud play, every new type of implementation really leans on this substructure, this infrastructure. Give us an example of a specific one you'd like to highlight.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. Well, before I give you an example, I just want to thank Devarius for the opportunity to be part of his vision and meeting his challenges at the Corps of Engineers. But I'll bring one that's relevant and in flight for us today. I'm a retired Marine. Spent 24 years in the Marine Corps. And one of the things that we struggled with, absolutely, thank you. One of the things that we struggled with in my time, and we continue to struggle with today, is warfighters performing non-warfighting type missions and activities at base, post, camp, and station. And you look at the Army and the Air Force are both down an enterprise IT as a service journey. And focusing on the Army particularly, they've broken it up and they have 3 lines of effort. There's a network as a service, end user services, and then compute and store is kind of how they've broken it up. And they've put that opportunity out for industry to respond and help them out on a non-traditional acquisition path. They put it out through an OTA. So Verizon has the opportunity to support the Army on that OTA. And what's made it really rewarding, both as a provider and as a partner, is through the OTA process, we've had just an incredible dialogue with the Army about understanding their vision, understanding where they want to go. Through a series of technical exchange meetings, we have refined the requirements, and we're rolling out a solution to the Army that we truly believe is developed jointly that will meet their needs. It's not just industry providing a solution and our customers consuming that solution, hoping that we hit the target, hit the mark. We are truly developing this together in partnership with each other.
That's fantastic. A great example. And I love the idea of not only modernizing in a modern way, but we're acquiring the goods and services in a modern way using this very powerful capability, which is the OTA, as you mentioned. Well, we're going to roll it over to priorities, and we're going to stick with the #1 priority. Lou, I'm going to start with you. Give us what's in the top of the job jar for you there at Department of Labor in regards to priority.
I think, we have a lot of priorities for the upcoming year.
Sure.
One is to continue what we're doing with the efforts we've already made this year. Data is going to be central to all that we do. Like Fred said, I'm a former military. I came from the Navy, and
we thank you for your service.
Thanks. But I can remember, being on an aircraft carrier and the computers were as large as refrigerators. And now you have people walking around with more processing power on their wrist. So one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that our data is accessible and it's able to be shared. We've had a large presence in the cloud. We're continuing to do that. We're standing up a hyper-converged data center so that we have a seamless fabric across our cloud and on-prem instances. We continue to look at that data. The other thing is how we use that data. In February of 2020, we announced a partnership with the GSA's Center of Excellence, where we started to use RPA. So we presently have rolled out 3 bots that we're using, trying to do a lot of the redundant, repetitive work and focusing our staff on the higher goals and missions of the agency and using that data to further our mission across the board.
Really important to bring those capabilities together, and a great example of what's going on over there at Department of Labor. I'm really pleased to hear that you're using the Center of Excellence as well. All right, we're going to take another short break. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.